What's up, man?
How you doing?
I'm good. How's life?
Good, good, good.
Nice
Very
to meet
good.
you.
Yeah.
Where are you located?
I live in Rochester, New York.
Okay.
Here or there. Canandaigua is the town that I live in.
Man, I could swear this morning I'm listening to an audiobook with Tom Brokaw. He mentioned Rochester.
I
And I
believe
was
it.
yeah, he kind of glowed about it. Um,
Yeah.
right on, man. Well, I guess it was in the stars. I guess that's why my ears were itching.
Yeah, that's
Well,
cool. That's very cool.
yeah, I'm in Kansas City, Missouri. So um
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Right.
I've never actually been there. The closest I've been is St. Louis.
I think
I've been.
I think that you would probably be very surprised.
Okay.
You'd probably dig it.
Yeah, I've heard there's a lot of cool stuff there. Like I'm really into like guitars and stuff. So JHS is out your way and stuff like that. The JHS guitar pedals are manufactured there, as well as the old back in the day, the old custom amps were out in Kansas City.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, like John Fogerty's. Um, but it's an interesting, like Midwest is out because I grew up in the North Michigan. And so, I have a lot of like, Midwesties, so it's nice to actually talk to someone that's, in the Midwest.
Yeah. Well, my family, my dad, more specifically, was born in Brooklyn and raised in Long Island. So
Oh, wow.
I was
Okay.
almost I was
Yeah.
almost a New York kid. I didn't realize until much later on in my life that so he joined the military and got stuck at Richards Gebaur, our Air Force base.
Oh,
Fell in love, and here we are. But
yeah, right.
he wanted to pack the family up and move us to New York. So I could have been a New Yorker.
That's really cool. Yeah. It's funny because, Rochester, we're actually closer to Buffalo than we are NYC. Um, so we're about an hour and a half away from Buffalo, and it's 6 hours away from New York City.
Okay.
So it's an interesting, so we're considered upstate New York or whatever, however that works. Not quite Adirondacks or something like that, but you know, so it's very, like Lake Ontario is a little bit above where Rochester is, and the old Kodak stuff. There's little remnants of Kodak still, they're
Okay.
still trying.
Yeah, they're still kicking. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. It's kind of turned into a hip thing. I see it on clothes and hats all the time.
Oh,
So
I know. It's like, okay, because when I was just coming out of high school, it was like the death rattle,
yeah.
So that was kind of I'm in my 40s, so yeah, the death rattle happened when I was, they're like, "Oh, you should get a good job there. That's a good job," and it's like, "No, it's not."
No, no. Yeah, it's interesting how that mentality happens. We have a big Ford plant up here
Oh, yep. Okay.
north of
Well,
us.
I grew up in Michigan. Car industry is a big deal.
Yep. Yep,
So,
yep, yep. That was the place where people told you to go.
oh
Well,
yeah.
man, it's great to meet you. And before we get into your life as a creative, I want to know, how did you
Sure.
survive COVID? How did you get through that time period, and how did it change you?
Well, the biggest thing for me was uh so I had gotten injured in 2018. And so I was already kind of in a hermetic um kind of space already, and so it was actually kind of nice because my wife's a teacher, and my son, so they were actually at home with me, so it was actually kind of nice. It was kind of a pullback as opposed to like, we're isolated and we can't go where, and plus we live out we don't live in like, we live in more of a farm rural area. So, it was a lot, there's still like trails to walk on by ourselves, and like, I could take the dog out, and so it wasn't so uh isolating. And I mean, it did stink because we couldn't see our friends,
Yeah.
obviously. But as far as like everyday life, and we were fortunate too because we didn't get real sick. and that was a concern because of my health issues. Um, we were really concerned about me getting and because I have along my physical, like my neck and some of that kind of stuff, physical problems that I have. I also have asthma and some lung issues. So I was really careful about where I went. I messed up. I follow a lot of the protocols. I didn't fly. Because where I live, it's pretty conservative, and so a lot of people are, "Oh, I don't have to wear that, I don't have to do that," and like that. And I felt like it was necessary for me to do that, and it turned out okay. Um, but yeah, and also, the thing too is like my wife's a creative as well, and so we were able to, like we did a cover of Lou Reed's Perfect Day. We just recorded it in the house, and it wasn't perfect or anything, but it was something that we could do as a family. Like my son was on kazoo, and I played guitar, and my wife sang on it, and so we were able to come up with projects at the house that we were able to do together as a family, as opposed to just feeling the crush of not being able to see people. And so we were trying to connect that way, and also uh you know uh we tried to connect with our friends as much as we could, through Zoom and I mean, it's not, and did all the holidays over the internet and all that kind of stuff. And so we did make an effort to connect, but I feel like we got through it fairly good, you
Right
know.
on.
But I could definitely see, like with my son, I could definitely see a little bit of like a little bit of withdrawal, because I think at the he's a little he's like in elementary school, and so
Yep.
it's like a little bit different dynamic than it is for us older folks, because we kind of know who we are,
Yeah.
and he was, so I could definitely see some, especially the online schooling. I don't think was um a great thing for him, but he did bounce back, which is really awesome. But it did take him a minute, which
Yeah.
was interesting. I definitely saw that. So that was a very interesting and unique situation, obviously.
Yeah, I had two teenagers in the house, and the
Okay.
regressive nature of it was pretty stifling. But
Yeah.
I think it created some resilience. We didn't
Yeah.
cancel things in our lives ever. I remember about 2 weeks prior to this COVID happening, my son and I was getting him into hockey. We were
Okay.
watching the St. Louis Blues,
Oh, right.
and
Yep.
and some dude collapsed at the bench like about first
Mhm.
quarter. He had a brain aneurysm. And I remember
Oh,
coming out and telling my wife, I was like, they just canceled the hockey game. Now I wasn't questioning it. I was just like, you don't see that.
no, that's
And then,
rare.
of course, 2 weeks later, the whole world and everything shut down for months and years. It's like we
Yeah.
had no idea the precursor.
Oh, yeah. And like it's fascinating, like, because as a young man, I played sports and stuff, and it was like, you learn a lot, you know, through that. And
Yeah.
so, but even by watching it, sometimes it's like, it's a reflective of our society, and it's very interesting how, like, oh, they just canceled it. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
like, oh no,
Yeah.
So it's
It's
very
just
interesting.
gone. It's wild. So,
Yeah.
Andrew, I want to get kind of to the crux of what you do for a living. So I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of third graders at a career day.
Yeah.
One of the kids looks up at you and says, "Hey, what do you do for a living?" How do you answer them?
It's very interesting. It's an interesting question because as of right now, because of my health issues, I am disabled, so most of my income comes from that. Um, However, I do have a small musical store online that I do sell musical equipment, and and as a creative, I'm in a couple bands that play locally, and we have a residency that we play every month, so that helps with generate some income, as well as we're just coming out with a book. So those are things that help out. But yeah, it's a little, mainly my money comes from being disabled. So
So what did you want to be when you were in the third grade? What was your dream?
let's see, third grade, I wanted to be a pilot. I
Okay.
wanted to fly planes because I grew up near an Air Force base.
Okay.
So I was homeschooled, which is interesting because it was the 80s, so it wasn't super cool to be homeschooled
Right.
back then. And but my mom would take us to the Air Force base to watch the planes land. And so you got to see the Top Gun planes land, like the F-14s and also the B-52s, which I thought were the coolest plane ever, and so that was kind of like, and I had an uncle that was in the Air Force as well, and so I just thought that was the coolest thing.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, that was definitely where but then I realized too, my eyesight wasn't that great, so that kind of killed me. in
But
the
it doesn't take eyesight to have vision and a dream for sure.
That's right. That's what I say.
Yeah. So let's get to the beginnings of this road of how you became a creative, a writer, and a
Sure.
musician.
Yeah.
Where were you born and raised, and what were these seeds that were planted into you that made you feel as though being creative was your avenue?
So it's interesting because I grew up in northern Michigan. Specifically, I was born in Marquette, Michigan, which is up by Lake Superior. And my family, we lived in Negaunee, Michigan, which was like 45 minutes away, but it's a lot smaller community. My grandfather was a iron ore miner. He was an electrician at an iron ore mine, and my dad was a registered nurse at the maximum security prison that was up there. So, um, and then later on, he was in the he was a nurse in the VA. So it's kind of a smaller community. It's interesting. My grandmother was a piano player in church, and so I used to turn the pages for her. She'd give me the leg kick, and I'd turn the page. Oh, they got to get the hymnal. And so I would do that, and so music was always like my first love. Um, we had a lot of folk music and classical music were the two primary musics that were kind of in the house, or uh, what I heard, because there was like these small up there, especially there was the community is Scandinavian, so a lot of Finnish people, a lot of Norwegian people. So there's some traditional folk stuff as well as just regular Americanized folk music up there. So there's like little festivals and things like that I was exposed to as a kid. And guitar I was fascinated. My dad played, he was a cowboy chord kind of guy. And so guitar always really fascinated me, but sound was definitely that was something that I've always been interested in since I was a little kid, for sure. And then writing, I started writing like seriously, like I took myself a little seriously anyway around sixth grade. I was like, oh, for some reason it was like the puzzle, where you get the words to flow right. And I can't remember, I was thinking about it last couple of days. Like I couldn't remember why I thought that was important, but I think it had something to do with hearing that Bob Dylan's the greatest songwriter, and he's from Hibbing, Minnesota, which wasn't too far from where I live. It's just a little bit, it's like 6-7 hours, maybe a little bit more than that. It's like a state over basically. And so like oh, Bob Dylan's the best. Bob Dylan's amazing, and then like understanding the literary part of Bob Dylan and understanding, okay, this is just as important as the music aspect of it, because some people would argue that his musical aspect of his music isn't the strongest. um but then some people would argue the other way. So, it's one of those deals. But for me, I was like, oh, you have to combine the two things to make the one thing. And so for me, it was a puzzle, to put it all together and see, okay, this is how it works. But I didn't really, at that time, I didn't have a guitar. I mean, my dad had a guitar, but back then you didn't touch dad's guitar. That wasn't a thing. So I definitely, I took some, my parents gave me piano lessons and stuff, and so I kind of suffered through that for a while, but it helped me, put things together sonically. And then writing was just a thing I started doing on the side to like try to figure out what this is, and try to understand. And I was never a big journaler or anything like that, but definitely, um, you know, trying to understand metaphor and understanding, how I could get my feelings on page was always a very fascinating exercise, I would say. And also, growing up, I was a chronic misspeller, and I still am. I don't. Some people have it, some people don't, and I don't have it. So it was a way for me to exercise and get better at writing in general as well. I just worked hard at try to be better. Because that it really bothered me that I wasn't able to spell very well. So
Yeah,
I put some effort into it.
I know the feeling. I made all my editors sweat when I was in journalism, and it wasn't. I know how to spell things. I just would go so fast, the
Oh yeah,
punctuation,
right.
and it would just be a mess. And I remember when I would really focus on it, it would still be all kinds of red marks riddled everywhere. It's like, there's things that we're good at, and there's things that we're not good at. And when you
Just
become an old man, it's like working on certain things. You just know you need to hire certain people to fix certain
mhm.
things, or you're going to give it the college try. But
Yeah,
it's wild, man. It's wild. So
yeah.
you kind of mentioned Bob Dylan. What was the first live concert you saw that blew you away?
Oh man. Well, the first musical thing that blew me away ever was it was my cousin. His name is John Churchville, and he was doing it, like the high school talent show, and he's a drummer. He's actually a highly sought after drummer. He worked on the Grammy winning album, Home by Billy Strings. He
Okay.
plays tabla on it, on one of the songs. And it's beautiful. He's a super talent. And I looked up to him like, he was like he's probably like 3 or 4 years older than me. But when you're a kid, it's like you might as well have been 10 or 15 years older, because that's just how that works. And he did this drum solo, and it just blew my mind. Just absolute, like, because his talent thing was, I'm gonna play a drum solo. And so he just started playing, and I was just like, oh, you can do that? I didn't know you could do that. And so and he had taken lessons, and he was, practiced very much. He's always been practicing and stuff like that. And he ended up going to Cal Arts, and then now he's teaching now and playing and recording and stuff. But it's just like, I didn't know you could do that. And then also, trying to think of my parents used to they had there was like a small theater in town. And so like the Air Force would bring their like brass ensemble, or like there was like a concert, they like they would have the semi-pro quartets and things like that. And there was a lot of high-end folk music being played around town and stuff like that. So my parents, you go to the little concert series, that they would put, the town would put on or whatever. And so those were the biggest for me. Those were, oh, you can do this. This is a thing. This is okay
Yeah.
to do. And it's actually necessary, because if the town's putting it on, it must be important. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So that was kind of my, and then also, like I said, growing up in the church too, singing is a major, playing music is a major part of that experience. And so, you know, I always took it seriously, you know.
What would be a dream show for you to see of anybody that's alive right now? What concert
Oh,
would you love to see?
man, that's yeah, that's one of those terrible questions. Because I kind of go around the, you know, I try to listen to as much music as I can. And but for me, Wilco is a big
Yeah.
and Radiohead is a big deal. And that might be aging me a little bit, but you know, and also I'm a big fan of the Pixies.
Oh
Um,
man.
you know, they're just monsters. And you know, those are, but also, you know, I like some classical music. There's a composer that I really like. His name is Alvaro Part, that I really like. It's really minimal, but it's very, you know, very beautiful. You know, I'm attracted to beauty and dissonance at the same time. Those are two things that resonate with me very much, because I think they represent who we are as people. You
Yeah.
know, 'cause there's beauty, but there in harmony, but there's also dissonance and some other things, you know, in us that's discordant. And you know, so those are things that, you know, I think that's what I appreciate about, like, even like Wilco too, is like they can play the most beautiful country music song ever, you know, but then they can turn it around and they're in 5/4, you know, playing the most dissonant chord you've ever heard, you
Yeah.
know. And to me that's beauty, like, and to be able to be that versatile as musicians is pretty cool in my opinion.
I got a couple little vignettes real quick, early
Yeah.
2000s. I caught Wilco at a big, huge, swanky ballroom in Des Moines, and it was
Oh,
wonderful. Totally
oh
cool.
man,
And
I'm
then
jealous.
around the same time, Hail to the Thief, I went to St. Louis and saw Radiohead. And I remember
Hmm.
everybody was like, it all depends on what mood Tom's in. He was in a
Yep.
good mood. He was trashing Ticketmaster and going on a high horse, but it was good, man. I mean, it was like, but I remember that was before cell phones, and I always carried a camera. So
Hmm.
we walked forever, and I had a little Nikon flip
Oh,
thing.
nice.
I had to take it back to the car. I couldn't bring it in.
No.
Yeah. So, but anyways, yeah, no, those were pretty epic. So let me ask you this. Every day you wake up, we have motivations to get our
Yeah.
things done. What is
Yeah.
that motivation for you? What gets you up? What makes you creative? What makes you accomplish what you want to get done?
Um, I'm one of those people that I can't help it.
Yeah.
You know, I think I think for me, not every day is awesome. And not every day is like, yeah, I'm gonna be the most creative person in the world today. But I think for me, it's about small victories. I think because of my health, I had a neck injury that caused some nerve damage in my arm, which which caused me not to be able to play music for quite some time. And I had to, you know, I had to go through rehab and do PT and OT and all that kind of stuff. And I'm still not 100%. I'm way better, you know, like I said, I'm able to play now, so that's really awesome. But there was a time when I couldn't, and 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 so I appreciate, you know, the small victories. Okay, I can move my fingers. You know, I can you know, I can write one sentence today, or you know, because sometimes with with pain and stuff like that, it plays tricks on you, and you have to like move through it. And I think for me, um, understanding that it can be taken away at any time, I think that's a motivator. But I've always been kind of a self-starter as far as art goes, because the kind of art that I do in the music that I play, and it's not necessarily what you would call mainstream, and it's not necessarily something that you know is for mass consumption or anything like that. And so um, when you're in that space, you either love it or you don't. And I think that I can't I can't I couldn't, it would be very difficult to live without it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
those
What's
are,
been yeah, I get it. It's a DNA thing. What's been one of the best responses you've gotten from a fan from your art?
um, one of the biggest, like playing music is, I move people to tears. And not necessarily like, they were angry or anything, but it was because I play improvisational music, and I play with a cello player. And so, we just hit kind of like, it's kind of like that Grateful Dead thing, when they're on. And we were at this, we played this thing, and we hit the right, we hit the right vein, and we were playing some really beautiful music. And it moved this person to tears. And they came at, after the show, they were like, that that was unbelievable. It made me feel about, all these things about my family. And like it conjured up, things for them that were good, and maybe some things that they needed to work on. And and to be able to think that deeply about something that I made, that is just come out of me, is, you know that I believe, like, there's no greater, uh, compliment. There's no greater, like, I couldn't do anything, it's like that, some people say, oh, it's channeling, doing this or that. But, I think, for me, it comes down to like my belief, in a higher power. I think it comes from that. I think it also comes from, uh, you know, what I want, what do I want to leave? I don't want to go to a show and be so discordant, and so, you know, so out of step, and like, oh, look at me, look at weird chords I can do. I think for me, it's not about me. I think for me, it's more about like the community. What are we doing together? And that's the most important. I think for me, when I'm playing a show, that's important, because I don't know, because of the issues, I don't know when the last show I'll be able to do, and every show is the last show. So,
Right on. So everyone out there has a perception of you, family, friends, fans, but ultimately you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
oh man, that's the biggest question, right?
That's a therapy
Is
one.
like, yeah, that's the one. I see myself, as a seeker. I see myself as someone that is trying to make sense of everything. Um, and I think, like, with my writing, I think I'm a little bit more. I think in my music as well, but I think in my writing, um, I'm asking questions. Why did this happen? How did this happen? How do I get through it? Those types of questions, especially in my book that I just wrote, C6 C7. Like, why did this happen to me? You know, how does it change me? How do I get better from it? Those types of things. And I think also with the music, it's like, because it's improvisational in nature, like, I, you know, it's sometimes it's a shot in the dark, and sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's not like the best, version of something that I could do. But it's a seeking thing. I'm looking for it. And I think that's something. I've always been curious. Uh I've always looked for, I've always been, trying to do new things, listen to new things, experience new things. And I have a little bit of that wanderlust type deal, where it's like, you know, uh, I enjoy traveling, even if it's not the best, trip of all time. Like, I still enjoy the journey. It's not
Yeah.
necessarily the A to B for me. It's more about what do we learn along the way type
Yeah,
thing.
absolutely. That's the Gen X way for sure.
Oh, 100%. I hit
So
the tail end of that bad boy.
that's it. So if anyone wants to get your book, your music, anything about your world, where do they go?
They go to rencovemusic.com and I got links to everything there. So that's the way to go.
Right on. Andrew, this has been great, man. I'm glad we've run into each other. Best of luck
Yes.
with everything.
All right. Thank you so much. It's nice talking to you as well.
Absolutely, man.